Hey, 8th graders, welcome to today's Explainer. I am so pumped to have you guys here with us because today we are unpacking a piece of American history that is just packed with absolute incredible drama. We're going to travel back in time a bit to the direct aftermath of the Civil War, a period we call Reconstruction. Now, this was an era of just profound change, massive challenges, and some truly groundbreaking firsts. And sitting right at the center of our story today is a man who completely shattered the glass ceiling of American politics. So let's just dive right into this and uncover the amazing story of Hiram Rhodes rebels. Now, to really wrap our heads around how massive this moment was, I want to hit you with a fascinating question right out of the gate. Whose Senate seat did Hiram Rhodes rebels fill in 1870? I want you to really think about the timing here. The Civil War ended in 1865, right? The country had literally just torn itself apart over the issue of slavery. Fast forward just 5 short years later, and an African-American man is elected to the United States Senate for the state of Mississippi. So, who sat in that chair before he did? The answer to that question represents one of the most profound shifts in the entire history of American politics. Okay, look at this. This is literally the ultimate historical irony. On one side, we've got Jefferson Davis. He was the former president of the Confederacy, a guy who led a literal war against the United States to preserve the institution of slavery. And on the other side, Hiram Rhodes rebels, a free black minister who became the very first African-American U.S. senator, representing that exact same state. He literally took Jefferson Davis's old seat. Now, for your homework, when it asks you about the what and the why it's symbolic, this is it right here. A man who represented the emancipation and the political rise of African Americans, taking the seat of the man who fought a war to keep them enslaved. I mean, you honestly couldn't write a better script for a movie. All right, here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll start with the ultimate historical irony, then move to who was Hiram Revels, check out the power of Reconstruction, discuss the rollback of rights, and finally wrap things up with true leadership and morality. Let's get to it. Starting off with Section 1, the ultimate historical irony, making history in the Senate. So the year 1870 was an absolute watershed moment for the nation. It wasn't just some standard political reshuffling. It was a structural earthquake in Washington, D.C. Hiram Revels was elected to the U.S. Senate by the Mississippi legislature in 1870, which made him the first African-American ever to serve in that chamber. And listen, this wasn't just a nice symbolic gesture. It proved that citizenship rights could extend all the way up to the absolute highest levels of government. His presence in that room represented the very real tangible possibilities of Reconstruction. African Americans were no longer just observers of the law, They were now in the room, actively shaping local, state, and national decisions. Moving on to Section 2, who was Hiram Revels? A life of service. Okay, so we know he broke this massive barrier, but what was the resume of the man who stepped into this incredibly high-pressure role? Well, this timeline gives us a brilliant window into his journey. Hiram Revels didn't just appear out of nowhere in 1870. He was actually born a free man in North Carolina way back in 1827. In the 1850s, he traveled north to get his education and became a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And when the Civil War broke out, from 1861 to 1865, he didn't just sit on the sidelines. No, he actively recruited African-American regiments for the Union Army and served as a chaplain, ministering to the soldiers. So all of this, his deep faith, his education, his active service, it all laid the vital groundwork for 1870, when he was elected to the United States Senate. And this incredible journey of his, it was deeply anchored in his faith. Consider this scripture from 1 Timothy 4:12. Do not let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Revels really lived this out. His faith formed the moral bedrock of his character. When he finally stepped into those grand halls of power, he didn't leave his pastoral heart at the door. He used it to guide his entire approach to leadership during what was a highly volatile time in American history. Now, you might expect a guy taking Jefferson Davis's seat to, seek some revenge. But Revels did the exact opposite. He governed with incredible integrity. He actively promoted reconciliation between the North and the South. He fiercely supported education initiatives for African Americans because he knew that knowledge is power. And fascinatingly, he actually opposed measures that would harshly punish all former Confederates. He wanted to heal the nation, not fracture it even further. So if you're wondering how he used his power once he got it, well, there's your answer. Let's look at Section 3, the power of Reconstruction. How did it happen? So how did the political environment change so drastically to make his election even possible? It all came down to a three-step process of legal and physical protections. Step 1, the Constitution was changed. The 14th and 15th Amendments officially granted citizenship and voting rights to African American men. Step 2, laws on paper actually need enforcement in reality, right? So federal military protection was stationed in the South to keep elections fairer and safer. And step 3, because of those legal rights and that physical protection, African Americans actively participated in government. If your homework asks for 2 ways they participated, here it is. They voted in massive numbers, and they were elected to local, state, and national offices. It was just a true, incredible democratic awakening. Which brings us to Section 4, the rollback of rights, the end of an era. While Revel's success was a massive highlight of Reconstruction's promise, it also serves as a really solemn warning. Progress is fragile, guys. It can be reversed when protections are stripped away. And this brings us to a critical concept you absolutely need to know: voter suppression. This refers to changes in voting laws, combined with intimidation, that are used to unjustly prevent African Americans from exercising their right to vote or hold office. This is exactly the structural barrier that was put in place to replace the federal protections that had allowed Reconstruction to flourish in the first place. So why did African American political power decline so sharply? Well, in 1877, a political compromise led to federal troops being withdrawn from the South. And without that protection, white supremacist violence rose dramatically, creating incredibly dangerous conditions for black voters. Segregation and systemic racism became deeply entrenched into local laws all over again. The devastating result? African Americans were systematically pushed out of political office for nearly a century. That window of opportunity that Hiram Revels confidently walked through was violently slammed shut. And that fulfills the final historical requirement for your assignment. Finally, Section 5, True Leadership and Morality, the lesson for today. Now, it's incredibly important that we don't just leave all this as static facts in a history book. We've got to transition from the historical vulnerability of the 1870s to the personal responsibility that you and I hold today. Looking at the life of Hiram Revels gives us a profound lesson in true biblical leadership. Leadership is not about seeking personal gain. It's not about seeking revenge. It's about serving others with deep, unwavering integrity. Like Revels, we've got to use our voices to promote fairness, reconciliation, and justice in our own communities. God calls us to speak truth, act righteously, and stand up to defend those who have no voice, even when, and perhaps especially when, it's unpopular to do so. This principle sits right at the very heart of our Godly Learners series. Education without morality will hurt. I want you to just pause and really reflect on that. What is the point of being smart, of being highly educated, if you're just going to use it to make bad choices that hurt other people? History is absolutely full of brilliant minds who caused massive destruction simply because they lacked a moral compass. Education has to be paired with spiritual integrity. It just has to. But here's the beautiful thing about all of this. Tying your education to that deep spiritual integrity doesn't just help the people around you, it changes you from the inside out. As this idea from Romans 8:6-7 reminds us, keeping your mind spiritual promises peace of mind. That's our experience, and it's the experience of people who truly engage with this kind of godly learning. It brings a lasting peace and a really positive, enduring change to your life. So 8th graders, I want to leave you with this one final provocative thought. You are getting an amazing education right now. You are developing your own voice. So like Hiram Revels, how will you use your education and your voice to defend those who have none? Remember, history isn't just about the past. It's the very foundation for the future you are going to build. So take these lessons, take your education, root it deeply in morality, and go change the world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you guys on the next one.